Welcome to Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com as well as the mobile app. He's Jonathan Casillas. I'm Lance Meadow with you for the next 60 minutes in multiple ways. You can interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can also find us on Twitter, hashtag GiantsChat. And as a reminder, you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. So today was day 2 of practice at training camp. I'm sure it brings up very fond memories. Jonathan, I'm sure you're missing this on a daily basis, right? It really tugs at your heartstrings.
First of all, I hated training camp, okay? I had New Orleans training camp back when they had double days, okay?
The Big Easy.
And it wasn't nothing like this. They got 3 days, no pads, right? I think we're full pads by day 2 and like 90% humidity.
Well,
90
so Sean Payton didn't mess around is what you're saying.
And you know what? People always ask me, how was those double days? The double days wasn't that bad because you get a break and they were like regular practices. It was the single day practice that was 3 hours. That was what killed me.
Well, because they had more time to lengthen.
But what it really was, what is going on here? Is that a phone that I just heard?
We have technology operating from every which angle. Come on, this is not your first
you
rodeo.
Step this
not
thing
your
up in here. What kind
BBKL
of
debut here.
show are we doing here?
We are professionals running a very professional show. Stop convincing the audience otherwise.
But it was the reason the 3 hour practice was so bad, because I was an undrafted guy, I was a young guy, I was a rookie, of course. We had 2 15-minute special teams periods. And where I was at, I was a scout team guy. And if you know anything about scout teams, you don't really get repped out. You don't get subbed out. So I had to do 6, 7, 8, 9 reps in a row with the 1s and the 2s and the 3s, and they're fresh every single time.
Yep.
And it would be vets coming up to the guys, like the young guys that were just basically bodies out there. And they'd be like, hey, man, like, you're doing a good job. And they'll turn around and start laughing because they know we're dying out there.
Of course, yeah, you're exhausted.
They don't have none of that no more. There's none of that no more out there, Lance. Nobody, I mean, there's one guy that got carted off yesterday, right? He had a heat exhaustion maybe. It was a Hyatt. He had a little heat exhaustion. It was like that all the time in New Orleans. IVs, everything, all kind of, we're popping the hydration pills and like throughout the day. They had these little ice buckets, right, that had these sponges in them. And like, it was heaven. Like, they'll put it on you and just like, oh, because it takes your temperature down a few degrees because, sure. I mean, training camp back in the day, it was rough, man. And I feel like it showed you what type of person you were, you know, and that got proven in training camp. Nowadays, it ain't the same anymore, bro.
It's unbelievable when you reminisce. I mean, you don't want to date yourself on this show, by the way,
I'm
expressing how far away you are.
I'm older than everybody in the building that's playing, that's for sure.
Well, yes, that's well documented. By the way, did you go to West Virginia when we were with the Saints? Is that where you went?
No, we were in New Orleans.
Oh, you were in New Orleans.
Yep.
Okay, because I know that there was a period of time where they took it out of town. That's why I
wasn't
curious.
there for that. I'm not that old, man.
Okay. Well, you were there for the height of Sean Payton's tenure in New Orleans.
I was, yeah.
Got to at least give you some credit from that standpoint. But we are not here to break down the New Orleans Saints.
No,
I can promise you that. We're here to discuss the ins and outs of Big Blue. And before we get into some other topics, I want to start with really the biggest development of the day is Saquon Barkley spoke to the media. This was the first time we heard from him, JC, since he worked out this new one-year franchise tag. And I think it was important for him to address the media and sort of get it out of the way, right?
Yeah.
You signed a new deal. Don't let this linger. Don't let it eat away at you. And I'm curious your perspective, because my biggest takeaway from what he said was about being in the right mindset before you show up for camp.
Yep.
And how he had multiple conversations with his teammates, and the constant advice and feedback that he was getting from his teammates was, Saquon, don't show up until you feel whatever went on is behind you, the whole negotiating process, and you're here to just solely focus on football. And I think that put things in perspective for him, because if he wasn't at that stage, Jonathan, regardless of what happened over the last few months, you wonder whether or not he would be able to put that behind him and get immediately back on the football field.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, no matter how, I could talk crap about what they're doing with training camp, about how it's watered down now, it's still a very physical ask, right? When you come in and it's warm outside here in Jersey, and the humidity is up pretty high, and they are working the guys, and the guys are running hard, and it requires a lot of attention, and Saquon, he's a veteran now. He's a guy that's been around the league for a while. He knows the ins and outs of it. He may not get any plays, right, in the preseason this year, but he's going hard at practice. He's training hard at practice. It takes a lot on you. It's a physical toll on you. It's a mental toll on you. So definitely I agree that he had to be mentally prepared to be here. And look, everybody loves Saquon in the building, right? And he loves playing for the New York Football Giants, and he was adamant about that. And I feel for him. I don't know if he was ever going to get a long-term deal. That kind of breaks my heart a little bit, And look, I was thinking about this all day yesterday and all day today, and I'm looking at like a team like a car, right? You got the driver, who I think is the quarterback, Daniel Jones, right? And then you got the engine. Who's the engine on the New York Giants? It has to be Saquon. Saquon's the engine, right? So, okay, he may not be a cheap engine. He may be expensive. But wouldn't you pay for an expensive engine even if you know it was going to blow out because it's that explosive? Because you have the chances of you winning is that much better with that engine inside. Yeah, you got a whole bunch of little V6s that you can plug in there, and they can get you probably across the finish line. But can it win the big race? You know what I mean? Like, I see him as the engine for the New York Giants. And you pay for an engine, right? And it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, I feel like. It doesn't matter what the market says. You pay the guy. And that's just me personally. I'm not a GM, of course. And I just feel for him because you can't tell me that he's not seeing his teammates, his guys, his brothers get signed these big long-term deals, and he knows he's just as valuable as these guys. And yes, he has a history of injuries, and yes, the position is falling drastically when it comes to market value and all of that good stuff. But I'm just talking about the human aspect of it, and that's something that I talked about before with Paul and on this show, because there is the human aspect. It's not just business.
Paul's not human, though, so that's the wrong person to have the conversation with.
I agree with you with that one, though. I agree with you with that one. But the human aspect of it, I feel for him, and it's kind of a sad reality that he's probably never going to get a long-term deal, even though he's going to make good money. He's going to make good money, but this is probably going to happen again next year.
Well, it's certainly in play. The Giants have the right to tag him again. We've seen some deals, and this doesn't apply to Saquon Barkley, but Sean Alexander, who played for the Seahawks, if you remember in 2005, Jonathan, he went through something similar with Saquon, where the team and the player worked out a revised one-year deal. In that deal, they actually put forth the language that the Seahawks could not tag him a second year in a row. That did not happen with Saquon. So to answer your question, the Giants have every right to tag him, and he understands that. He talked about that with the media because he was asked about, what does this mean for your future? Do you feel as if you get a long-term deal? And he said, I don't have a crystal ball. And he wasn't going to go down that road. But you also brought up another talking point where they did pose the question. You see Dexter Lawrence got paid. You saw Daniel Jones got paid. Andrew Thomas the other day just got announced. I mean, how does that make you feel? Because there is the human element regardless of the business. And he basically said, from a human perspective, I'm happy for all my teammates. Yeah. And it seems as if the locker room shares that sentiment, Jonathan. And maybe you could shed some light being in locker rooms. You hear teammates get new deals. Everybody has a different perspective. But from listening to Dexter Lawrence, who also spoke to the media, and you listen to Andrew Thomas and Saquon, everybody seems to have the same message where they're not worried about counting other people's money. They're just happy for the guy. To be able to cash in.
Yeah, and that's just, like, we talk about the human aspect because people think football players are robots, like just go in there, go to training camp, go to practice, lift weights, and play football. Like, we're humans. We got families, bro. We got kids.
Absolutely.
Like, I got a picture of him I just posted up with Saquon playing with his young baby. He got, 2 kids, right? He got a young baby, though, a really small kid. And, like, that's all he want to do. He want to play football and hang out with his kids. What's more human than that? You know what I'm saying? So, he's a great human being. He's going to say, I think, the right things. What he said last week in terms of, like, I could say this about my team and could say this about that. I think he was just letting them know I'm not happy about what is going on. And I think that helped get that deal, being made. And then also maybe kind of like warning them next year, like, don't try this again next year, and I'm not going to be happy about it, which understandably so. But I always – this is the whole thing I've been talking about for Saquon is, like, I hope he gets his money, and I've always been an advocate for players getting their money because, yes, the injuries are very high in this sport. It's higher at that position.
Sure.
But look, man, people are getting paid doing other things without the injury risk, without putting their bodies on the line, and you literally are doing it. You saw it from DeMar Hamlin last year. He died on the football field. Like, people say you put your body on the line, but we're really putting our lives on the line out there, and you should be paid for that. Yes, it's entertainment, but the entertainers are making money in America, right? That's the people that's making money, and I'm happy that anybody gets paid, and I do feel some type of way about Saquon not getting that long-term deal because who knows how long he actually has to play, right? And not to say I'm not trying to count Mara's money or nothing like that, but that's something that I feel like the NFL needs to figure out in the next few years. Maybe they can have some type of addendum or something when it comes to like somebody being hurt at that position, something, because there is no way you're telling me that Saquon is only worth $10 million guaranteed, and Daniel Jones is worth what, 80? How much he got guaranteed? And I love Daniel Jones, but really, you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I completely understand where you're coming from. It's just that to me, JC, that's the economics of football.
That's it.
I would argue,
Yep.
right? I mean, look at the amount of money quarterbacks get with respect to the salary cap, remember, which limits the earning power of every player
Right.
in comparison to the QB. But there's no doubt about it that the value that Saquon presents to the team, all you have to do is look at what happened last season and in 2018 when he was a rookie and what he put forth. But the economics don't necessarily add up completely with the value with respect to that, because once again, the running back franchise tag, look at that number compared to any other position. To put things in perspective, do you know the only other positions that have a lower franchise tag than the running back is the kicker and the punter? That's it.
Really?
Yeah, everybody
I was
else.
going to say linebacker, but wow.
Everybody else is above the running back.
That's
all you need
isn't
to
that
know.
horrible? That's so bad. That's so bad. I can name like every running back in the NFL.
And you can't name any linebackers, which is the position you played, by the way.
I was going to say kickers, okay? Not linebackers.
Oh, I don't know. It seemed like you were going. You seemed like you were going in the direction of LBs. Maybe I bailed you out with respect to that. You can name every running back. When the show slows down later on, I'm going to whip out every single
Please
roster.
don't do that.
I'm
You're
going to
gonna put me
test
on
whether or not you
blast,
can name the
bro.
fifth running back on the New Orleans Saints. That'll be something to look forward to here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. No, but your point is well taken. My response would be, talk to the union.
Yeah.
Your players' union.
Something has to be done. You know, I think there's too much discrepancy from, I guess, the quarterback position. And look, kickers and punters, they're football players.
But they're not people. They're clearly not people. No.
They're not
They're
people.
players, but they're not people. No.
But I think that, you know, when we went and they basically reduced at the last CBA, they reduced what rookies were going to get, and they kind of put it into the, I guess, the veteran
There's a scale
pool of money
to the draft.
now, you know, but then
Yep.
you get Bijan Robinson, right? He signs number 2 overall. He's got $21 million guaranteed, 21 and a half.
I believe so, over the
Something
course of
like
the
that.
rookie deal. Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I know he's good. I know he got drafted high, but bro, Saquon done proved it. He done it already. You know, and that was the whole thing when Jamarcus Russell got paid, and even Sam Bradford when he got paid $70 million, I think, guaranteed when he got paid, and it was
From
like,
the
all
Rams.
right, okay, guys, this is something
that's
has
what
to
set
happen.
it in motion. It was
Right,
the Bradford deal,
that
which was insane.
something has to happen, right? And I think right now with this, how the running back market is going, I think people are saying, okay, something has to happen. I think that gap needs to get closer from the quarterback to the running back. And I'm just going to use them because that's the biggest discrepancy, especially when you talk about people that are important to a team's success.
And it's going to vary from team to team. For example, the Niners with Christian McCaffrey, based on how they utilize him. Tennessee with Derrick Henry.
Yep.
Cleveland with Nick Chubb.
Yep.
And the common element here is all of those players were given second contracts.
Yep.
Whereas these other running backs that we're talking about, they've been hard pressed. Alvin Kamara is another guy I would throw out who received the second contract. But you do the math. It's far and few. I mean, think about it. There's 32 starting running backs in the NFL.
Yep.
I listed, four
Four guys.
I mean, that's an eighth of the total.
Right.
That tells you, once again, all you need to know. But just real quickly to circle back to Saquon before we open up the phone lines and move on to other elements of the discussion, it's interesting you brought up the reminder about these guys are human at the end of the day, because one of the things that Saquon shared, he said during, I think it was maybe last season, he was sitting down with a teammate and they were talking about their kids. You know, he had recently had a kid. He didn't name the teammate. And they're at the lunch table, and then the following day, that player gets cut.
Yep.
And that was a reminder of how things could drastically change.
Yep.
You know, nothing's guaranteed. And that's why he was unwilling to go so far to map out his future, which I don't blame him, because once again, tomorrow's not guaranteed in this league, and you know that firsthand.
Yeah, man. And I played 9 years. Which
is
I had a
amazing.
great career. You know, I was a teamer, reserve linebacker. I got to New York. I earned my starting job, and I kept it. I ended up being a captain. The entire time, I didn't own a house. I mean, I bought my mother a house in 2015. The reason why I didn't own a house to live in, because my job security. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I will always say this. What's my job security if Peyton Manning got cut? What's my job security?
Sure. Yeah.
Peyton Manning got cut. He was the best player in the NFL, and he proved it the year they went they didn't win a game because he didn't play. He should have won MVP that year.
Yeah, because then they got Andrew Luck as a result of the draft. Sure. Yeah.
He should have got MVP in a year he didn't play because he proved he's the most valuable player in the league. You go from being a contender every single year you're there, and then you don't play because you're hurt, and your team doesn't win a game, you're the best player in the league, right? And he got cut. Peyton Manning got cut. What's my job security like as a reserve linebacker? You know what I mean? But that's the case for the NFL. That's why people say it's called not for long. That's why I'm always an advocate for players getting paid, players getting a bag. And there has to be something done to where, yes, I think the team should protect themselves. You know, if a player gets hurt, maybe he doesn't get the whole contract fully guaranteed, right? I agree with all of that stuff, but players should be protected because at the end of the day, like first of all, careers are 3 years long,
on
average, right?
Yeah.
3 years long. And if you happen to play 9, 10, 11, 12 years, you have the remnants of football on you for life. I wake up every now and again, when I wake up, I have an extreme limp, not a little limp, an extreme limp. My back hurts, my neck hurts, my fingers hurt. Everything hurts because of what I did in football. And my insurance is up in September. It's done. So this is all things that when you look at it, it's like, that's why guys are fighting for the little bit of money, which is millions of dollars, that they're fighting for. Because people are like, oh, Saquon's only fighting over $1 million too. That matters, especially when you talk about a lifetime of, I wouldn't say suffering, but a lifetime of dealing with the symptoms that you had, that you accumulated from the NFL.
And especially to your point, if the insurance runs out because you don't know how long you're going to play throughout your days. Absolutely. So, by the way, just quick side note, you've disrespected your own position on the show, and you disrespected Jim Sorgi, who filled in for Peyton Manning. I didn't think you were going to take it to this level on Big Blue Kickoff Live, but I am. I'm keeping track of all the individuals that you've thrown under the bus on the show.
I heard what he said about Hackett.
Yes, well, we're keeping tally. We monitor these things. Let's get a few reminders out of the way, and then we will open up the phone lines. The Giants Huddle podcast, you can check that out. Search for the Giants Huddle. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You could also go to giants.com/podcasts. Giants single season tickets. Well, we got the 2023 NFL schedule. It's officially out. And single game tickets, they're now on sale. Don't miss the Giants at MetLife Stadium this season. Visit giants.com/tickets to secure your seat. You could also take your fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2023 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And the Giants official connected TV streaming app, it's Giants TV. It brings you original video content, game highlights, on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, as well as the Giants mobile app. Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Moving on here, Lance Meadow, Jonathan Casillas with you. Let's open up the phone lines as we continue the conversation. Big focus, obviously, on Saquon Barkley speaking to the media for the first time since finalizing his new deal. We have Tom in Stratford. He joins us here on BBKL. What's happening, Tom? What do you got for us?
Hi, gentlemen. I was going to ask one question, but when you start talking about, the medical care and all that other stuff, Jonathan, we spoke probably about a month ago when you were on the air, I think with Paul, and we were talking about going to 18 games and what the players should get. And I was adamant that you should hold out for pension plan from day one and at least 20 years, lifetime insurance, orthopedic care, neurologic care. And because, hell, we almost watched a player die last year.
Yep.
So definitely something has to be done. The running backs do get screwed, but, I don't know what can be done. You got to talk to the union. I don't know. Maybe they have to. I have no solution to offer. It's not right. But you know what? I hate the salary cap, period. I mean, to me, that's like an infringement on free enterprise.
In fairness, though, other professional sports, Tom, have salary caps, too. It's not just the NFL.
I know. And that's why I'm surprised that these player unions ever agreed to this. But be it as it may, my main question, though, when I originally called was, when you don't have pads on, how do you evaluate offensive linemen? And even when the pads come on, Jonathan, what level of intensity is it compared to a regular season Sunday? Is it like you guys aren't whacking each other like you're playing Dallas on Monday night, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. And look, you could only do so much in evaluating when you're looking at people what they call in their underwear, right, in their pajamas out there with just the shells on, because there's only so much they can do, right? The inside offensive line, defensive line battle, that's a physical game, and you literally can't be physical during these practices. But what they do look at is technique. You can see footwork. You can see if a guy is an athlete. You can see if a guy is actually mentally prepared, right? If he can get the X's and O's and get the schematics. How is his communication? How is he absorbing the offense? And then you could also see when he's out there, does he flow with the other guys? Because the offensive line, they're tied together, right? I feel like that's really the only group of positions that are really kind of tied together like a string. And you can kind of see some of that happening, and that's chemistry. And that, yes, it has something to do with when you're out there, you're, throwing guys on the back, or you picking up blocks, or you're run blocking people. But you can see that before the ball is snapped, and you can see that in the underwear. So I think the things that they're evaluating right now from the offensive linemen, I think number one, can they mentally handle what we're giving them, right? That's even before you step out into the field. And then when they're out there, does he look like an athlete? Can he move his feet? How good is his kick step? How good is he redirecting? How good is he adjusting to the stunts that the defensive lineman is doing? How well is he communicating linebackers? They call in the mic, right? That's what you can see now. But that's only, of course, a fraction of what they're going to do when they put those pads on. And yes, the intensity is not as much as Sunday, but you'll be able to see once they put them pads on, who's a guy that can actually be a player for you and who's a guy that could be a starter.
So you think it's maybe 75%?
75% what?
Intensity level when the pads come on?
Oh, I mean, nah, it's gonna be at 100%. You're not gonna save. Oh. You're not gonna save your intensity for the game. You know what I mean? They're gonna go out there because, look, if you think about the offensive line, right? Who is a guy that we know is gonna start on the offensive line for the Giants? You got Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal. Who else?
John Michael Schmitz has a good chance.
It's a good chance, but he's not a locked-in starter.
I would say the two tackles and Mark Lewinsky are probably the three safest bets.
Okay, and then you look on the defensive line. You got a lot of people that need to win jobs. The intensity level is going to be very high in training camp. And then the Giants are going to go to Detroit and practice against Detroit. Sure. Now, that intensity level is a little different, too, because you're going to be tired of hitting your own teammates by that time. Then when you get somebody else, now – the guy that you was beating up, now you are working together to beat the other team up. So it definitely increases, but I'm not going to say it's at 75% level in training camp, because there are guys that's putting in their all because they need to win jobs. They need to stay on the roster.
Tom, appreciate the phone call. Thanks for giving us a ring. And we'll see them get their pads on next Tuesday as we see practices elevate a little bit in terms of at least the physicality. But to your point, the mental fortitude that has to be front and center is there, whether the pads are on or not, because you're at least going through the motions and you're proving to the coaching staff you understand what they're dictating in the classroom and you're applying that onto the field. Because even if a defensive lineman can't grab onto you, to your point, you could go through the fundamentals and the footwork from an offensive line standpoint.
This is the mental part. This is the mental part for the offensive lineman, because you're definitely going to have some guys on the outside, linebackers, running backs, receivers, corners. They're getting after it out there. They're doing their one-on-ones. You're seeing them, because you can actually be a little physical on the outside within 5 yards. But the skill, that's what you're seeing on the outside. On the inside, it's mostly mental, and to see if the guys can actually move their feet well. That's what you can see right now among the offensive line, and that's about it.
Well, because here's the thing, Jonathan, whether the pads are on or not, once you get into a game, if you're a step off, who cares how physical you are, right? I mean, the defensive lineman is going to run right by you. You don't stand a chance. So that footwork should not be overlooked, even if the pads are not on. Let's head back to lines. We got Big Ed in Maryland joining us here. What's happening, Big Ed? What do you got for us?
Hey, what's up, big man? Is that Lance?
That is indeed, yes.
It's the Meadows of Meadows. What's up, buddy?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Oh, man, enjoying it, man. I'm so enjoying it. I was finally at peace knowing he finally signed his tag. That was so threatening. That was so threatening. But then all the other stuff just happened, too. So it's like, okay, in its own way, it's all going to work itself out. All we can do now is just focus on getting ready. Guys, I really am nervous to have any kind of prediction of what we might do this season. I have no clue.
Well, we're not going to put you up against the fence and have you make a prediction if you're not comfortable doing that. There's no rules and regulations in place. That must be part of the phone call.
Nah, yeah, well, not really, but just looking excited. Just really excited, football being back, and we got about 2 weeks before we play the first preseason game. So,
Sure.
Just matter of just focus, man. Laser eye focus on what we're going to accomplish. Because if we don't see ending in Vegas, we won't be in Vegas. That's it.
Yep.
That's really it. That's really it. That stadium is so beautiful. Oh, my God. It's beautiful.
Are you envisioning yourself there watching the Giants play maybe the Kansas City Chiefs or something in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, and then especially being in Vegas, that's in our favor because they don't like Kansas City.
Oh, because of the Raiders.
He's manifesting,
connection.
bro.
I was going to say,
I
this,
like it, man.
This is the psychoanalysis portion of
it.
Big Blue Kickoff Live. Well, Big Ed will let you meditate on your own. We appreciate the phone call. It's good to hear from you. Take it easy.
Thank you, Big Ed.
And have a good one here as we move forward. Coach Marvin is in Delaware joining us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, Coach Marvin?
How you doing, Lance? Jonathan, how you doing?
All right, Coach. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right. I was just listening to you guys talking about the salaries between a punter and the running backs, and they were just doing that on First Take today. To me, I think what's lost in this whole thing is that the league is paying guys based on their position, and we know what positions are the most important positions on the team. But just because those positions are important don't mean some of those players deserve that salary. Just because they play in that position, they don't deserve it. I think it should be based on production and not on positions, and I think that's where it's being lost. And because the running backs are an important part to the game. I think Saquon, I don't know, Lance, you usually a numbers guy and on these types of things, but I think Saquon probably touched the ball third the most, is number 3 in touching the ball the most, counting the center and counting the quarterback. And if he's touching the ball that much, the guy should be getting paid. I mean, it's not my judgment of what he should get paid.
Sure. No, listen, Coach Marvin, I don't mean to cut you off. I completely understand where you're coming from. But remember, the franchise tag is a mathematical formula based on the salaries at that position across the board.
Right.
So it's not dictated based on Saquon gets X amount of touches. It's dictated based on what the top 5 guys at his position across the league. So it says something about the position overall, not how the Giants value him.
Right. But that's the part the league is getting wrong. It should not be based on position. Should be based on production of the players, regardless of their position, and you wouldn't have these problems.
Well, but I think
how much.
No, and I get that, but you see, how do you then go about labeling that? Because if you are calling for them to revamp the franchise tag, and I'll let you finish. I just want to set the stage here, because right now the way the franchise tag works is there's quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver. There's offensive line. That means guards, tackles, and centers get thrown together. There's no separation.
Yeah.
Defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, corner, safety, and then, of course, we have the kicker and the punter. But there's safeties that play cornerback. There are running backs that are pseudo-wide receivers.
Exactly.
There's tight ends that are wide receiver-esque. There has never been a tweener franchise tag. And if you go down that road, maybe that's a middle ground. But when you talk about it shouldn't be by position, my question to you is then what do you label? How do you go about – if you label it skill player, skill player is so generic.
Yep.
How are you specifying? I mean,
Darren Waller fit into skill player?
yeah, or you could have, well, what about the third guy on the running back depth chart is going to tell you, I'm a skill player.
Yep.
I'm a running back.
I understand. Don't get me wrong. I understand what they're doing. I'm just saying I don't agree.
Yep.
Now, if you want to get into that detail, the reason the running backs have gone down, and tell me if I'm wrong, is because they feel they can get a 7th-round pick to do the same thing. They can get 3 guys to do the same thing. Have they made those statements?
They haven't, but I would agree with those sentiments.
So, guess what? But guess what? If you look at the numbers, Saquon is doing the work of 3 people. He's getting the work of 3 people. So don't give him the. If you're going to play that game and say, well, we can. It's a position by groups where we have 2 or 3 guys, and they're going to alternate back and forth. They don't do that. And if you're going to pay him like that, then do him that way. You cut his touches down. You allow the other. Because if it's me, this is just my opinion. Because the running backs are trying to figure it out. If I'm in the running back group, I say this: I tap out. When I run a play, my partner, you get the next play, and we save each other, and we save money that way. And because if that's the way they're preceding us, then that's what we give them. But the guy is way ahead of all the other guys in how many touches. Derrick Henry's way ahead of all the guys he touches, and he gets paid. I think he must be somewhere about $15 million.
Yeah, well, Henry did receive a second contract, to your point. So he's one of the few running backs that was paid. Yeah.
Right, but he's in the same class as Barkley. Those other guys, I would agree. And we're talking a small percentage of these running backs anyway, a small percentage of them. But that small percentage is getting penalized by the majority of the running backs. And that's the part I'm saying. You pay the guy on his production. You can, yes, the franchise tag, you are totally right. I'm not talking about the franchise tag. I'm talking about before he gets on the franchise tag, of paying these guys what they're worth. And that's all I'm saying. And it is a shame. People are comparing their salaries to punters.
That's insane.
And think about that. Think about that. To punters. And they touch the ball second most, third most, counting the center, than anyone on the field. Well, and they always have 11 guys chasing them. Really, no other position has that.
And I'll throw one more there for you, Marvin. Every single defensive their first goal any week is to stop the run. That's always the number one priority on any defense that you play on.
And that's why they're lively. That's why their lifespan is so short, and they can't get the second contract because they are putting the miles on them. Yeah. But then pay them what they're worth if they're producing, and then cut those. If you want to do it like in a group, okay, we can get 3 running backs to do the same thing. Then treat him that way. Then don't treat them and say because they always said.
Well, but the reason why that's not a fair comparison is because Saquon, even though you're arguing he's equivalent to what 3 guys on the Chiefs do, let's say, for example, but if Saquon goes down and you're paying him the equivalent of the 3 Chiefs running backs, you still need to find a replacement on your roster for Saquon. Whereas the Chiefs, if they lose one of those 3 guys, they still have 2 others to fill in. So that's why from salary cap financial standpoint, Coach Marvin, it's not equivalent, at least in the minds of a GM, and I wouldn't blame them for not thinking that way. The other thing is, and this is what really hurts running backs, and we'll let you go on that note. Appreciate the phone call. Thanks for giving us a ring. This is another thing that I think is a challenge for running backs. And Jonathan, you went through a prominent college program at Wisconsin. These running backs, right? You can't enter the NFL until you play at least 3 years, okay? So if you're Saquon, right? You go to Penn State. You're getting hundreds of carries over
probably 250 minimum a year.
Okay, so 250 minimum. So do the math. He stays in college for 3 years. Let's say then he declares for the NFL. That means that he's at 750 carries. That's assuming, of course, he fully stays healthy. Okay? What other position comes in to the NFL with the baggage of 750 touches on top of you throw the ball to Saquon Barkley? So that's a very precarious spot that running backs are in before they even get to the NFL. That's why You get him on a 4-year contract, 5th-year option if they're in the first round. It's 4-5 years plus the 3. You've already technically played 8 years of football, okay?
No, I hear you.
Forget NFL, forget college. Combined, the wear and tear of 8 years of football, no other position compares to that level of baggage.
Yeah, I agree fully. That's why they're such in a precarious position, the running backs and the GMs and anybody that's when we talk about, figuring out that price point for Saquon Barkley, for Derrick Henry, for Josh Jacobs, right? Because all of what you said is true, and even what Coach Marvin said is true, and what I'm saying is true too. But that's the discrepancy. That's where the argument is going to happen. And I think the thing that really limits this conversation is the franchise tag. That takes away all of the arguments that we're trying to make, the franchise tag, and that's what the Giants did. That's business. That's just straight business. If I was the Giants, I would have did the same thing. Yeah. That's a smart move to do if 100%. You have it.
Sure.
It was the best play for them to make. And then they ended up getting him here. He didn't sit out. So it's a win-win-win for everyone. Maybe not for Saquon when we talk about dollars, but Saquon's going to play football this year. That was the end goal for all parties involved, right? Was to get Saquon to play football for the New York Football Giants, and that's happening. He may not be happy, but remember what I said before. He may not be happy, but we want him to run angry this year and maybe try to go ahead and try to fight for that, maybe possibly get an extension, which I don't think is going to happen. But I think he's going to run angry this year. I think we're going to want him to run angry this year, especially in his division.
Well, he has all the motivation in the world because technically he's on a contract year again because there's no guarantee beyond this season. It's interesting that you brought that up. He was asked about did he consider holding out for the entire season, if it ever got down to that. And like we talked about previously, Le'Veon Bell was the example that taught everybody. But he was still asked the question.
What did he say?
This was his response. No, I thought it was interesting. He said, how do I make myself more valuable as a player if I sit out an entire year without any production, right? Meaning, how do you then come back, okay? So you played in 2022. You had a very productive year. There's no sign of you in 2023. You then hit the market again on 2024. Older. You're a year older, okay? Maybe not as much wear and tear, but Le'Veon Bell went through that too.
But a little rusty, though, because you sat out for football for a year.
How does that make him more valuable? That was what he brought up.
But you know what I like about Saquon? I think he has an understanding about where he's at. I think he has an understanding about the business. I think possibly they made a mistake in his camp of not signing him for that whatever offer that they had, because I don't think that money's there for him ever again. Like next year, I think it's going to repeat the same thing. The cap next year, not the cap, the franchise tag next year is a little bit higher this year. I think the same thing is going to happen. I think they're going to franchise him again because that makes the most sense for the Giants. Saquon's probably going to be upset again. And then they're probably going to figure something out again. I think that's going to happen. If not, he's going to stay on the franchise tag. And knock on wood, that's if he doesn't get hurt. Because if he gets hurt, we're not even having this conversation next year. Saquon might sign a $1 million deal next year if he gets hurt. And that's the worst part about this whole situation, because he can get hurt. The possibility of him getting hurt is actually very high. Not just because of his injury history, because of the position he plays and how many touches he's going to get.
And the sport itself.
Yep.
I mean, there's pretty much a 100% guarantee that you're going to get hurt in some capacity. The question is, will it still enable you to carry through and play the remainder of the season? Let's head back to the phone lines. Tim is in Charleston joining us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, Tim? What do you got for us?
Hey, Lance, Jonathan, great to talk to you guys. I want to have a little fun and get away from the esoteric a little bit between now and the beginning of the regular season. And inspired by your pregame show, I put together a few true falses, and I'd like to give them to you guys. You can answer as quickly with or without explanation.
You're taking Schmelke's job here.
And Lance, because then I'm going to before the beginning of the season, I'll email John with all the answers, all the results, and at the end of the season, I'll email him again and tell him who had the best scores, like you guys do. So anyway, I got.
For the record, though, before you start, we were having fun on this program before you called. I just want to make sure that the record expresses that. But, yes, go ahead.
Yes, I always have fun listening to BBKL. I just want to take it in a little different
direction. You want to take it. Okay.
Let's go.
All right,
let's go. There's so much. You can't talk about the same things over and over. Okay, so I got two offense and two defense. Question one, true or false? The Giants will have, for the first time in a Wink Martindale defense, a player who gets double-digit sacks. Whoever wants to go first.
True.
I'll go false.
Okay. Question two is the Giants' offense will have 40 or more plays of 20-plus yards. True or false?
Ooh, boy, you're really going opposite end of the spectrum from last
Trying to do
season.
my math. True.
I'll go slightly under.
False for Lance.
False,
All right.
yes.
All right, great. Next question is, scroll down here. All right, the Giants' defense will be top 10 in either yards allowed or points allowed. True or false?
They might want to say true for all of these.
Well, considering you're giving one or two options, I'll go true
Yeah, I'll
for
go
that.
true,
yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
could see either one of
Yeah.
those being top 10. Yeah.
I'm very optimistic about the New York Giants.
You too, Jonathan? True
Yeah,
for
true.
you?
Well, he
True for
said
me.
he wants to go true
All
on
right,
every
cool.
single statement, so you could pretty much
Well, wait
pencil
till
that
he
in.
hears-
Yes.
Wait till he hears the last one, you know. And the last one is an offensive question. The Giants will score at least 3.5 or more points per game on average in 2023. And if you say true, would you say the same thing if it was 4 or more? So that's got a little conditional aspect there.
I don't understand the question.
Well, basically, if I
question-
understand this correctly, Tim, see, I'm your translator. See, you're the host of this game, and you're still making it so convoluted. So they averaged 21.5 points per game last season.
Oh.
So, Tim, you're saying it's got to improve by 3.5 to 4 this season? Is that what you're laying out?
Three. Let's just say 3.5. Let's forget
Okay.
that caveat of the second half.
So
they have
21.5 plus 3.5.
plus 3.5.
So that'll be
25.
25.
Correct, yeah. So he's saying 25 points per game. They
The
average.
average for the year?
Yes, the average on the season.
I'm going false.
And I'm going to go false as
Yeah.
well.
I think they're going to be at
Okay.
24, around 24.
Yeah.
I think they're maybe 2.5 points better.
Well, 4 points is a lot
It
in
is.
that territory. I
Yeah.
know he said 3.5, but
I tell you what, though, if the Giants can get 25 a game, and then their defense can keep people, relatively 2 touchdowns to 2.5 touchdowns a game,
And
the
they're a
Giants are going to
playoff
have,
team.
they're going to have some success this year for sure.
Yeah, thanks for playing, guys. And,
hey, you got it,
and, yeah,
Regis. We appreciate you chiming in on the program. Yes, thank you so much. Is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Is that next week, Tim? Is that what you're throwing out next
I'm
week?
going to try to hit all the guys on the team.
Oh,
all 5
wow.
of you,
Well,
each week. So,
and we
with
wish
the same
you
questions.
We wish you a tremendous amount of luck getting through and convincing Dom and Pearson otherwise, and appreciate the phone call in terms of Tim playing a little bit of true or false with us here.
I mean, he's
Yes.
a consistent caller, right? He's a guy
Yes,
that I've
absolutely.
spoken to multiple times. Let him have his
Well,
little
but this is the
fun
first
here.
time we've played a game.
Yeah, I've never
You
done
know,
that before,
so-
which is interesting.
Now,
I'll be
we
sure
don't
to
want
keep a close eye
Yeah.
on Tim on the phone.
Okay,
you
all right.
should be on your radar.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it
You'd
should
have to give me
absolutely.
a fake name to get through this.
Yeah, you never know. He could be playing games with you before he plays games with the host.
That's
How about
funny.
that? We're taking this science to a whole other level. All right, let's head back to the lines. I believe it's Yasmin is in New Jersey with us here on BBKL. What's happened, Yasmin?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Great conversation. I'm not going to ask you guys to play any games.
Disappointing,
But I
but
wanted to
hopefully we'll
touch on-
survive. Yes.
Yeah, right. I'm sure you're not, you're disappointed that I'm not, I don't have any games for you. But anyways, I wanted to touch on a couple of things, if I may. Coach Marvin was talking about, Saquon and the salary, and I'm sorry, but as Giants fans, we need to move on. He already reported, and I feel like it's an issue if he's not there. It would be an issue if he wasn't there. So I'm like, I don't get it. I think that Giant fans need to be happy and accept, for what it is. I love Saquon, but I think that it's just too much. I think we need to move on from it. He's there. He seems happy.
Sure. Well, and that's I don't mean to cut you off. That's the whole purpose of him speaking to the media today, to move on. I think what Jonathan and I were having, Yasmin, it wasn't so much the Giants. We were having a larger running back topic,
Yep.
economics
And it's always good
conversation.
to get perspective
Yeah.
as well from people like myself who's played the game, somebody like you who's covered the game that has interesting perspectives on it, just to kind of see, how we think and how we feel about it. Which, for me, I love listening to Lance. I love listening to Paul and John because
See, most people don't say that.
they
but
have.
I'm glad you
You're
at
my
least say
guy
that.
though. Come on,
I
man.
appreciate that. Yes.
And they have a different perspective. I have a player perspective, and I'm an undrafted guy. My perspective is different than yours. My perspective is different than Saquon's.
Yep.
Right? Saquon's a star running back. I was an undrafted linebacker. We have different perspectives. I always love to hear different perspectives because that helps my perspective out. And I could be like, oh, okay, I never thought of it like that. And for me, I love to hear different things, but I'm with you. I'm done with the conversation with Saquon because he is here at camp. I get your point.
So now I do appreciate, your info because obviously you are a player, so you do have a different perspective. But now that you're in the media, would you say that, let's say they sign Saquon to a long-term deal, and for some reason, knock on wood, he gets hurt. I'm sure that we would be blaming, Joe Shane for saying, hey, why did he give him a long-term? He could have just, signed him to a tag and that's it. So I feel like Giant fans can't have it both ways. I believe that I'm always going to root for the Giants no matter what, but we root for the laundry, we root for the team, not necessarily the player.
Well, I think some fans would argue they are connected to a specific player that they like, and they root for that player passionately. So I could see some fans going both ways. And in fairness, Yasmin, I think what you have to understand is, not that we're wishing this happens, Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence could get hurt, can't they? Yeah. They just signed long-term deals. What's the difference? You're going to blame them, the general manager, because they invested in those two guys? I mean, that could happen. Can it not?
True.
So
100%.
It holds true for every player. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the value of the position, we didn't make it up, and I think that it's the teams that have done that, and they devalue the running back.
The Giants, just real quick, just want to clarify, and Jonathan emphasized this too. The Giants are following the economic trends in the NFL, and you can't blame any team for doing that. That's what the economics dictate right now, and they're taking advantage of the parameters that the franchise tag puts in place. It's as simple as that. Go ahead.
True. Awesome. By the way, I had no idea about the, what Shane did as far as giving him a new contract. I thought that's genius. I'm sorry. That's as a GM, and I hadn't seen that since 2005. So I'm like, I was very happy that they actually did that.
Yeah, trust me, we're all happy. We're all happy that they got it figured out.
Let me ask you something about the depth, because that's my original thing why I called, and I got sidetracked anyways. But I haven't seen this depth from the Giants in a very long time. Would you guys agree or disagree in every position? And what do you think is the weakest position?
Ooh.
It's a good question. And yeah. I would agree from a big picture perspective, and we'll let you go on that note. Appreciate the phone call, Yasmin. I'd say overall, from top to bottom on the roster, you've got competition across the board. In terms of the biggest question mark depth-wise, see, I wouldn't say linebacker, Jonathan, because I don't know how many linebackers Wink is going to play consistently.
Yeah.
You'd have to say you're going to play 5 or 6 linebackers, and then I'd be, okay, let's talk about that. I would probably lean towards cornerback. And the reason I'll say that is there's volume, there's not a lot of proven commodities,
right.
And there's players coming back from injury.
Yeah.
So if you had to put me against the wall, I'd say cornerback would be my response.
I would probably say middle linebacker because Davis just got hurt.
That's fair.
That's what I would say, because Davis just got hurt, and I think he was a guy that they were expecting to play. Maybe not start, probably start, maybe
Valid
not,
point.
Whatever the case is, but he was definitely going to be a player for the Giants, especially on first and second down.
And the two guys that are in the talks to replace him, Micah McFadden and Darian Beavers, not a lot to go there.
But Micah McFadden played last year, and Beavers is coming off an ACL as well. So I think middle linebacker, I thought they did address it with with Okereke being there, but then with Davis going down. And that's the thing. Right now, depth is cool now, but you got to have depth week 1. These guys got to make it through training camp. Like Lance said earlier, it's 100% a fact. Everybody's going to get hurt in football. Let's not nobody get hurt in the next 3 to 4 weeks before the season actually starts. Now that can be detrimental. There's a lot of teams that, not a lot of teams. The Giants had a lot of injuries last year in training camp and last year early in the season.
Sure.
So depth is great right now, but what about the depth in week 1? What about the depth in week 6? What about the depth in week 18? That's what really matters. Because if you start off the season, you're healthy, all of a sudden 5 or 6 main positions go down, that's a whole different team. Absolutely. And you're not just going to get guys off the street that's going to step in and do a job like Saquon, like a job. And Isaiah Hodgins was an anomaly. That doesn't happen all the time, and the Giants were lucky to have Isaiah Hodgins last year and get that guy from, I guess he was still on Buffalo, right? Or was he on the street?
Yeah, he was waived
he was
from
on the
Buffalo.
Peace Squad. Oh, he got waived, so he was on the street.
Yep.
So they found a guy on the street who helped the Giants get to the playoffs in Isaiah Hodgins. You're not going to find that all the time. That's not going to happen all the time. It doesn't actually happen at all too much. Most teams, they have guys on the practice squad, right? Somebody goes down in that position. They want to add these guys because they've been looking at these guys, and these guys are in-house. sometimes those are not the answers. They try to go elsewhere and bring in guys off the street. You're just rolling the dice with that.
Yeah.
You have no idea how good this guy's going to be. You have no idea if he's going to fit into the locker room. So there's a lot of, stuff that goes into it. But I like the depth right now overall for the New York Giants, and I do think with Davis being hurt this early, I think the linebacker, maybe they got to bring in somebody else to that played good football in the NFL already. Because all the other guys are pretty much unproven besides McCarrick.
Yeah, and that's why I think linebacker, you make a strong case. It's just I'll stick with how much are you going to put the middle linebacker on the field? Are you going to play beavers and secondary guys?
Yep.
That could change the conversation. I think two things as a quick side note helped Hodgins, which is why he's further an outlier of what you were talking about.
With Buffalo.
He was with Buffalo, so he knew the scheme. And you talked about the locker room. He had a lot of former teammates in the Giants locker room who he knew from Buffalo. So that is probably two of the biggest reasons why you don't see that happen very often. Because how many times do you pick up a guy who the head coach previously worked with and he's got a lot of teammates that are on his new team? So those are two things. And just real quickly with respect to corner, and this is why that was my answer, even if you say Darnay Holmes or Cordell Flott is going to be the nickel, whether you include them in as a starting guy or remove them, we're talking about Aaron Robinson, who's on PUP, who's been in and out of the lineup, doesn't have a huge sample size. Rodarius Williams has been hurt previously. Trey Hawkins was just drafted. Nick McLeod is moving to safety. Zion Gilbert is another guy who's played a little bit. So you're not talking about a wealth of experience behind the Adoree Jacksons. And let's not forget, Deonte Banks, I understand he was a first round, but Jonathan, he hasn't played one NFL snap yet. So even some of your starters don't have much of anything on the NFL resume. That's why I lean towards the cornerback position.
Yeah, understandable. Good point.
Let's head back to the phone lines. We've got Don on the line, I guess from a location which is unknown. I guess we'll leave it at. Don, welcome aboard. What do you got for us?
Hey, gentlemen. Hey, Lance. It's Don from Texas, man. How are you
Okay.
guys?
I don't know why you shied away from telling Dom that you were from Texas. That was on you, Dom. So Dom is willing to take the blame. I wanted to defend our staff, and I wanted to put it on the caller, but you have been rescued. He's raising his hand. He is very anxious.
We're accountable
to
here.
come
We're accountable
to your
here.
defense. There you go.
I forgot
Yeah.
what you said, Don, and I don't want to get it wrong.
Okay, it said Don and then what you wanted to talk about. So I was like, apparently Don,
It's from
he's
nowhere
trying to protect
land.
himself, and he does not want to be identified on New York Giants programming. But go ahead, Don from Texas. Yes.
It's all cool. No worries at all. Jonathan, where do you get those cool shirts, man? I'm assuming that's Kiefer Sutherland from the Lost Boys.
Oh, what you know about the Lost Boys, man? I love this movie. One of my favorite vampire movies ever.
Absolutely.
Where did I get shirts from anywhere? Like, I grab a shirt from Walmart. Like, I'll be walking Walmart, like, ooh, that's a cool shirt. And I'll grab it. I go online. They pop up all the time on Instagram. I buy them off Instagram. I get them from, like, thrift stores, at, anywhere, at malls, cheap places usually. They're usually, like, cheap T-shirts.
He's an equal opportunist.
Yeah, thank you. I
Very
appreciate
nice.
that. Yeah, man.
All right, for the real reason I called. All right, I want you guys to put on, JC, I'm going to ask you to put on your defensive coordinator hat, and Lance, I'm going to have you put on your offensive coordinator hat. Against the teams in our division, just stick to there. Knowing them from last year to what they've done in the offseason, how would you go about attacking them defensively, and how would you attack them offensively to dictate what you do best? Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
All right, Don.
Yeah,
Appreciate the phone call. Good question.
Good question. Look, and I'm looking. I'll put my defensive coordinator hat on, but I have to understand who's on the roster on defense, and this defense was handpicked by Wink Martindale himself. So I'm not going to change my philosophy. I'm going to keep the same philosophy. I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to run blitz. I'm going to add a safety to the box a lot, especially in this division. I don't think any of these quarterbacks are going to sit back and throw the ball 50 times. All three of the other teams in the division, they're run-first teams. They want to establish the run. They want to establish their physicality. So I think you have to attack the run game, meaning blitzes to the run game on first and second down, adding in a safety, adding in a corner. And I think that fits into the personnel that they've been drafting the last 2 years, and the personnel that's kind of, I guess, been overhauled from the previous regime for the New York Giants. And then I will rotate all my guys, like especially along the defensive line. I don't want Dexter Lawrence and I don't want Williams. I don't want them playing 90% of the snaps. I do not want that. I want to have capable guys that are in on first and second down, capable guys that are coming in on third down, that are going to spell the guys, and then have them for the entire year. So when we get to the playoffs, we got them fresh. Well, not fresh, but fresher than they probably were last year, given that they played so many plays last year. And Leonard Williams is a little bit older, Dexter Lawrence is a little bit older, and making sure that when we get to the playoffs, we have everybody in place. And I did my best job to keep every single body healthy. So basically, I'll play guys on pitch counts throughout the year. You know, I'm not sitting anybody, but I'm keeping them on pitch counts. I'm not going to kill Bobby Okereke. You know, I'm not going to have him play 100% of the snaps every single game. Maybe one game here, maybe one game there.
Based on matchups.
But I'm going to spell him. I'm going to make sure he's fresh, especially along the defensive line. And then I'm not going to take anything away from Wink and what he built here. I'm going to be the same type of aggressive defense that Wink will be.
As far as the offensive philosophy against what the defenses present within the division, with Philadelphia and Dallas, I'll throw them both into the mix because, Jonathan, they both have really good pass rushers, right?
Yep.
So how do you slow down pass rushers? You got to run the football.
Yep.
If you don't run the football, then you're putting them in a position to thrive where maybe you get 2 yards on first and second down. You face third and 8. You don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that
against Dallas and Philly, you have to run the football.
Yes,
if
sir.
you can't run the football, and I'll take it a step further, even if you involve the running backs or the receivers in screens, the point is third down is so critical against Philadelphia and Dallas. If you average between 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 15.
That is not where you want to be at.
You stand no chance. So that has to be the philosophy. And I would say I don't really think anything has drastically changed with Philadelphia and Dallas because they still have depth and they still have really strong fronts.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to say, oh, well, we're going to attack the secondary, in order to attack the secondary, you got to loosen up the guys in the front.
100%.
Right? And Washington, I would say the same thing, Jonathan. I mean, they got that front four.
Yep.
That front four hasn't gone anywhere with respect to Washington. So you have to be able to run the football effectively because I would say of all the teams, the Commanders have more question marks in the secondary. So how do you get to attack that facet of the team? You have to loosen them up front, which really means the heart and soul goes back to the play of the offensive line and being able to establish the run. And as an extension to that, though, I'll throw in short passes by Daniel Jones. If you get Wan'Dale Robinson and he picks up 4 yards on first down, Jonathan, that's a win.
Yep.
Because now it's 2nd and 6.
2nd and 6.
So even if you pick up 2 yards on 2nd and 6, it's 3rd and 4.
Yep.
I'll take 3rd and 4 more so than I'll take 3rd and 8.
Yep. No, I agree. I think that's a good philosophy, especially in this division when you basically got two of the premier pass rushing teams in the division.
Yeah.
You have to, number one, protect the quarterback. And then the way you do that is not just the great offensive line play in the pass game, but running the ball effectively and making sure that they keep an extra guy in the box, and that will open up the offense. And I don't know how many times we spoke about that last year on pregame shows and postgame shows and BBKL, but that's the philosophy of a lot of teams, you know, but
specifically
especially in this division,
right? Because this division, it's truly a copycat division. Everybody you look around, you're like, boy, these defensive fronts. And if you go back to the Dallas game, the first one that Cooper Rush played, because Dak came back for the second one, and that was the game where DeMarcus Lawrence just went off.
3 sacks, right?
Yeah, against Evan Neal. Go back and look at the third down. The down and distance that the Giants faced in that game. I'm telling you.
A lot of third and long.
Yeah, it was not pretty as a result of struggling to run the football and changing field position as a result of that. Let's head back to the phone lines against my better judgment. Wilson is in Roxbury joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Wilson?
What's Lance? Hey, Jonathan, dímelo.
Dímelo, papi.
Jonathan, listen to me. This Saquon Barkley apologist is getting a little out of hand. And because of this, listen, I'm going to give you 4 names which can make or break this Giants season. Daniel Jones, Andrew Thomas, Kevin Thibodeau, and Adoree Jackson. That's it. Those 4 guys can make or break it the Giants season. Saquon Barkley, I love Saquon, but Miles Sanders got paid $7 million. He got paid $11. I mean, they're basically the same player. Maybe Saquon's a little more. He got a little more jitter here and there, but it is what it is. I mean, he has to thank his lucky stars that he plays for the New York Giants, which is a class act organization. Another organization would have traded him. I mean, he's getting paid like probably a third
Well,
or fourth
Wilson,
best
hold on.
running back in the league.
Why haven't the
What?
Raiders traded Josh Jacobs? Josh Jacobs is in the same position as Saquon.
They'll trade him eventually.
They'll trade him. So wait a minute.
You'll see.
Hold on. Are you guaranteeing that here on Big Blue Kickoff Live? I want to hear a seal of approval.
No.
I want to hear a guarantee. No. When you
All
speak
right,
this
fine,
confidently,
fine, okay.
I want
All
you.
right.
You actually give me a date and a time that Josh Jacobs is going to
No,
be traded.
I'm not going to give you a date and a time, but I'm gonna guarantee that Jacobs does not play for the Raiders this year. Put it down, baby.
All right,
Wilson
I'm
from
mentally
Rochester.
putting it down. I don't even need to write it down. Trust me. I unfortunately remember a lot of the things you say. Yes.
Hey, Lance, let me ask you something. When are you going to invite me, man, and to sit right there between you and Jonathan and talk crazy stuff for an hour? I mean, listen.
For an
I'll tell you,
hour.
an
Wow.
You should be fortunate if I invite you here for 30 seconds, an hour. This is my response. When you look out the window and there's little piggies that are flying, that's when we make a space for you at this table. Yes.
Oh God, that's just cold-blooded, but I still love you, Lance.
All right.
I love
Well,
you.
I'm
But
glad
listen,
that I still have
all
a
kidding aside.
spot in your heart. Yes. Yes. What would
no,
you like
all
to
kidding
finish
aside.
off the program? Yes.
No, all kidding aside, though. I love Saquon, but what is he? Listen, if all the houses are selling for $350, right? And okay, I love your bathroom. Your bathroom is the best bathroom out of all the other houses. I'm gonna give you $25,000 for the bath. I'm not gonna give you another $250,000. He got paid more than 90% of the other running backs. What is it gonna be? Why should he be upset about?
Going crazy.
Well, once again, and Wilson, we
Thank you, Wilson.
Can't just put into words enough in terms of the insight that Wilson from Roxbury brings to the table. I will say this, and I think you could relate to this maybe more so than individuals that haven't played football. It's not fair to look at it from Saquon's lens to the common man, okay?
Right.
And the best way I could say is Saquon is looking at himself in terms of the elite running backs,
Yep.
the elite players in the NFL. That's how he's operating. His mindset, to go back to the last caller's statement, is not how am I compared to the fourth running back on the New Orleans Saints, because Jonathan happened to suit up. I don't know why I'm picking on the
You
Saints
did
today,
that again.
but well, you see, there's a trend. No, but in all seriousness, right? I mean, Saquon's not thinking like that,
No.
Jonathan. So when you make those comparisons, I don't think it's fair because that's not the process that he's going through.
Yeah, and look, I was thinking about this earlier too, and I guess we can probably end on my last comment, and you can close out and do what you need to do over
Thank
there.
you. I
I'm
agree.
just saying
Well,
this will be the last thing I'll say.
Much better your
Yeah.
comment than Wilson's comment, but yes, go ahead.
And this would be probably the last thing I talk about in regards to Saquon's like contract and all that stuff. I was a fan of players when I was younger. Some people are fans of teams, right? Matt LaCoste was here. He's from Chicago. He still was a Chicago Bears fan when he played for the Giants.
Tight end reference, yes.
And I was a fan of players. My favorite player growing up, please guys,
We won't judge
be
you.
careful with me, okay? Brian Dawkins. He's my favorite player.
Okay, well, no judgment.
My favorite player.
Sure.
Oh, there's judgment.
You know.
And basketball was Allen Iverson, then it was LeBron, right? And I
There will
followed
definitely
them.
be judgment on that last one, but go ahead.
But the thing is, I followed them.
We have enough time.
There are
Yeah.
people that are Giants fans, regardless of who's playing for the Giants, right? And then there are people, especially the younger generations, kids, that are Saquon Barkley fans. And not only are they fans, I'm getting goosebumps. Look, bro, talking about it. He is a hero to some of these kids. Eli Manning was a hero to some people, right? OBJ was a hero to some people. Saquon Barkley is a hero to kids. I see them out there in the stands. I see them out there. I see how they look at him. He's a role model, whether he like it or not. You know, and look, I'm going to tip my hat off to him because I think he handled this, I think, the best way he possibly could. Because at the end of the day, he's not getting paid his actual value, right? But the fans, the people here, we all respect him. We all appreciate him. His teammates do. I think the Giants show that they appreciate him because they went outside of what business told them to do. And they made a deal work for him because they want him here in the building because he's a hero. He's not just a good football player. He's not just a great football player. He's a hero. He's tremendous. Great character. One of the first things I ever did with him We were in Fort Lee. It was a Play 60 event, right? And there were other guys there. I'm not going to name no names. And me, y'all know me. This is the reason why I'm still a part of the Giants. I love to do stuff in the community. I love to do stuff with kids. We're in Fort Lee, and they were interviewing me after we were done with the kids, right? Nobody's paying attention to what's going on over there. But I was, because my face was, and the camera back was to him. Saquon was over there playing with kids after everybody else left. And they're interviewing me because I was kind of like the host or whatever. And I watched him do that. That was his rookie year. And I seen that. I said, bro, he's a special person. He's a person that actually cares. He's a person that's going to go the extra mile because he understands that he has that hero type of responsibility. And that's why, for me, I feel for him because I think he's a tremendous guy, not just a tremendous player. I think he's a tremendous guy. That's going to be the last thing that I talk about when we talk about this whole Saquon contract situation. I'm done. I'm not doing it with you, Smokey. I'm not doing it with Paul. I'm not doing it with no callers, so don't call up and ask. I'll talk about football moving forward. Nothing in the past, but that's my feelings about Saquon. I think he's a hero, and I'm glad the Giants got it figured out for him to be here.
I'm honored to be your guinea pig on this subject. I'm glad that you took it all out over the course of this program. I just want to make the record state that. So Brian Dawkins, Allen Iverson, and LeBron James. So you went twofold in the NBA. You only had one guy in football and two in basketball?
Well, I was a basketball player. I didn't play football until I was 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I watched Tim Hardaway was my first, like when I first really started knowing what basketball was.
Crossover, right?
And my dad was a big Knicks fan. He's a huge Knicks fan, and I didn't like Jordan because my dad didn't like Jordan.
Well, now we're getting to the heart of it. See, that would explain why you did
But
not
I mean,
go
I
that
love
direction.
Jordan, but that's my first exposure to sports was through my father, and it was basketball. And then I started really getting into it on my own, and I loved the ball handler of Tim Hardaway. And then Allen Iverson came on the scene. I was like, whoa, my gosh. And then that ended up being my favorite. But the point I was just trying to make, some people like players, some people like teams.
No, that's well said.
Yep.
Yeah, listen, I can relate to that, but I'm just happy that your first exposure to professional basketball was watching greatness, even though it came at your team's expense.
Yep.
So I'm happy that you were able to witness the greatest player of all time, and you were able to digest it, and it brought you so many wonderful memories based on your childhood. With that being said, that is going to wrap up Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Reminder, today's episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live is part of the Giants platforms everywhere and Giants.com/podcast. For Jonathan Casillas, I'm Lance Meadows. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest. We'll be back up and running again on Friday right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Have a good one.